Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday night, so it means it is time for Cover 3. My name is Miss M. I am your fearless hostess of Cover 3. I'm sorry that I haven't been with you for a while. I couldn't speak last week because, of course, while they were not successful, my Redskins were playing the Super Bowl champions, and I had to go and voice my displeasure at, the guy with the real long braids. So anyway, I couldn't speak literally last week until like Thursday. So that's why I didn't join you last week. But here I am back again, and guess who I have with me tonight? You are going to be so thrilled. She has not been here in a really long time. It is my buddy, my sporty one, my sports infusion girl, Pamela Michelle. Pamela, welcome to Cover 3 tonight. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
And I am glad that you have come back. It has been way too long since we have had the chance to talk football. So, since
Yes.
we are talking about all things NFL, why don't you, before we kick it off, give folks an idea of where they can see you, where they can listen to you, where they can find you, other places where you're writing, speaking, broadcasting about football.
Okay, well, of course, I do write for NFL Female. I do New York Giants covers. So you can find some of my work there. You can also go to www.sportsinfusion.net and you can always find out what I'm doing, what shows I'm going to be on. And of course, you can listen to me Wednesday night at 9 p.m. for Sports Infusion, where we cover everything besides football as well. I'm actually really excited because we're going to have a hockey hopeful named Brandon Billy on tomorrow night. And it's really exciting because I'm kind of documenting his journey about how it is to make a hockey team and about trying to chase his dream to get into the NHL.
Wow, that sounds really exciting. That is going to be tomorrow night, you guys, at 9 o'clock on Sports Infusion, so please don't miss it. But let's get back to talking about all things NFL. And so, you and I are in the same boat this week. Now, I'm
We
sure
are.
I don't have to remind you that a couple of weeks ago, my boy Sheila not only knocked us down, stole our lunch money, smacked us around, but he also kicked us while we were down, like we
Yeah,
were redheaded stepchildren. I mean, the Giants did a number on us. And so,
absolutely.
yeah, and so it seems like, unfortunately, you guys ran into the NFC East bully Philadelphia Eagles. What
Yeah,
I mean, there's really not much you can say when your team loses like that. I mean, I know,
yeah.
but give me a recap. Tell me what you think went wrong. Just address the game a little bit for me.
I'm not really sure exactly. It was so weird because the last couple games, the Giants seemed like they were getting on the right page. It's like I had a big question about how Eli was going to adapt to McAdoo's offense, just because it's such a different style. He hasn't had to learn a new style in 11 years. And to ask a quarterback to basically adapt this new style, it really was kind of it was a big task for Eli, I think. I feel like it was anyway. And then all of a sudden it seemed like he was getting on the same page. The receivers were on the same page. And I don't know what Giants team took the field on Wednesday. I really don't on Sunday. I really have no idea against the Eagles what happened, how the Eagles got into their heads like that. But Nick Foles didn't look as good at the beginning either. And it seemed like maybe by third quarter they could get back on track. And it just, nothing ever seemed to click. And the thing is like, with the thing that irritated me the most is that it seemed like Philadelphia fans were really taking pleasure in the fact that Victor Cruz went down. I mean, that really hurt us a lot. Regardless of what people want to say, how Victor Cruz has been kind of, miscellaneous from the game plan, he really hasn't been intricate into it. The fact is he is, because teams are so focused on what Victor Cruz is doing. That's what leaves Ruben Randall open. You know what I mean? That is why Donnell had such a huge game, is because people have to pay attention to Victor Cruz. They don't have a choice. And now with Victor Cruz being gone for the season, it's going to, you know, it's great Eli has these targets, but it's not the same talent level as what Victor Cruz can offer. So I do see the Giants sort of maybe in a scramble type mode. I don't know if they're going to be a little bit more run heavy now. And the thing that really is terrible is that Rashad Jennings is hurt too. And you don't know how much you're going to be able to rely on the rookie Andre Williams. And I love him. I mean, he's a local guy, he's a BC guy. I was really excited that they drafted him. When the mock drafts were coming up, I actually had him going to the Giants, and it was sort of like a dream scenario for me, just because I liked seeing the BC guy going to the New York Giants because they needed a running game. They really did. They needed a running game. When you go take Peyton Hillis off of his couch and say, please come play for us, I mean, when you look back in retrospect, should they have let Ahmad Bradshaw go? I know
Mm-mm.
he's injury prone, but it's like I still feel like that was a mistake because I would rather take a Bradshaw at 80% than what they have on their bench right now for a running game. Because even if he doesn't practice all week, if Ahmad Bradshaw can get on his feet, he's going to do what he always does because he's a gamer. And he's proving that in Indianapolis right now. So I always felt it was a little bit too hasty to sort of let Bradshaw go. And as much as you want to try to justify it, it's a little unjustifiable now that Rashad Jennings is hurt. And you can't look at it in a crystal ball and say, okay, well, we knew this is what was going to happen, because you really don't. But now, with the injury to Jennings, Victor Cruz, McBride had to be put on the IR as well, and they signed Kevin Ogletree today from the Dallas Cowboys as a receiver, and they also signed Chandler Fenner as for their line as well. So I mean, they're making moves and did transactions today, but you're not replacing Victor Cruz with Kevin Ogletree.
No, absolutely
You're
not.
just you're
And I
just not.
think and listen, let me tell you something. Um, I'm sure you remember, and you're not a Dallas fan. I'm not a
No.
Dallas fan. For sure, we are definitely sisters of the NFC East enough to be united against that team. But
Yeah.
you remember what Philadelphia did when, oh God, this was way, way, way long time ago when one of their guys went down in Philly like really, really bad, and they were cheering that the
Yeah.
receiver got hurt. I'm trying to think of who it was, and I can't remember. Was it Michael Irvin? I don't remember. Anyway, so they're famous for that. I mean, that.
Well, this is also a crowd that threw snowballs at Santa Claus.
Well,
So,
and batteries and other
yeah.
miscellaneous items. So I mean, come on now. But the one thing that I will say is that you know, I think I think that you are seeing the same thing that a lot of teams are seeing right now, and that is the trouble with um, not having everything sync up. Like if you have a revolving door of position coaches, even not even just the head coach, but position coaches
Yeah.
and changing of the guard for coordinators and things like that. Your personnel can be in place. They can be a cohesive team. They can be able to read each other very well and anticipate each other very well, but when you throw a brand new scheme into the mix or ask them to switch away from something that has become habit for them, it's very difficult sometimes to get. And it's almost like the wheels start wobbling and then the axle breaks and then, the whole car just falls apart at that point in time. But I'll tell you, I haven't seen anyone, and I mean not even Peyton Manning, play consistently well. Everybody, it seems this year, I don't know, the whole, there's something really funky and freaky going on in the NFL because the whole league is just askew. I mean, you've got, first of all, who would have thought that Dallas would have beat Seattle. I won't praise them because I will not only lose my spot in the NFC East as a fan, but I will be drummed out of Redskins Nation, no pun intended. So I'm not cheering for them, but I am saying thank you, Dallas, for taking care of that because everybody wanted to talk about how infallible that team is, and unfortunately we are finding out now that, maybe Richard isn't so infallible. Maybe, Russell does have a flaw or two. So that is certainly going on. The other thing that we are seeing right now is, just getting back to the Giants and the Redskins. I think that we're seeing, unfortunately, some things going on right now as far as just the loss of certain personnel, whether it be that they were cut or traded or, for whatever reason they're not with the team anymore. And unfortunately, having to make up for that. And you can't, you're right, you can't see it. It's not a crystal ball. You absolutely cannot tell when somebody is going to be cut or excuse me, hurt, so that the person that you're cutting today is probably your security blanket of tomorrow. The man, I'm going to tell you, the train continues to travel off the rails in DC. For a minute there, we had like a few point lead, and it was lovely. And I thought, well, hey, we may be able to pull this one out. We may be able to make it competitive. And yet again, we don't have an offensive line that will allow for us to be, we can't get our run game going because, if your offensive line cannot allow your quarterback to be successful, then they're certainly not going to be able to block for your runner and have your runner be successful. So it's really strange to just to see the it, what am I trying to say here? What's really strange for me is seeing how all these people who wanted to talk about Kirk Cousins, and the fact that he was going to take Robert's job from him, it's strange to see them now suddenly fall silent and not have too much to say. Unfortunately, seeing a situation where we are seeing a situation where we have a very glaring issue, and I think that, like the Giants, that when you were talking about how you can't look into the crystal ball and see that who you're getting rid of, who you're trading, who you're cutting, etc. When you're
Yeah.
going to need that security blanket of them. I think that what the Redskins are seeing now, and certainly I'm not saying anything bad about Robert, so I don't want to go off on that tangent, but I things are seeing now is that even though that debt is paid for him,
Mhm.
we gave up so much to get him when we should have maybe been a little bit more moderate in our approach to get him. Um, we gave up so much to get him that now we are seeing the consequences of not addressing the positions that are were going to be there to help him. Trent Williams can't do this all by himself. Tyler
Right, right.
Columbus, I'm sorry, Tyler Columbus and Chris Chester, please, I could get out there, and and I'm an old lady
You
and
may
out of
have
shape.
to.
you
You
know,
may have to.
you know what? I very well may have to, and just give me some shoulder pads and put me out there because if anything, I'll bite ankles. I'll do whatever I need
Right.
to do. So yeah, but I mean, I think that we are seeing the effects everywhere in the league of so many trades and cuts and things like that. And cuts are going to happen. Trades are going to happen. But this
Yeah.
takes me kind of back to a point that I made some time ago about how you really don't see players staying. Free agency has completely, to me, disrupted sport, period.
Right.
Um,
It really has. And it's just that's why it's so crazy because when a player like I'll use an example and homer out and say Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce, everybody thought was going to retire as a Celtic, and he probably will because once he's done, they'll probably sign him back for a day so
mhm.
he can retire as a
Right,
Celtic. But this is a guy who had seen like really lean times and stayed. He could have left and went somewhere else to try to win a title sooner than he did. But he stayed, and what did they do to reward him? They went and they got Kevin Garnett. You know what I mean? Like they got pieces to bring in, but when he got traded to the Nets, everybody was just like, oh, all right, we understand Garnett because nobody ever really thought of Garnett as a true Celtic. You know what I
hmm
mean? But Paul Pierce was the last, like, what people in my generation had regarded as a true Celtic because I'm not really old enough to remember Larry Bird or Danny Ainge or Kevin McHale. Like, I know who they are, but I'm not old enough to have appreciated their play. Like Paul Pierce is somebody who I knew was a gamer who left his heart out on the court, who stayed in Boston when he could have left.
right.
And with free agency now, it's like it's almost as if okay, well, we're going to take this guy, and you hate to say it, and it's so strange because people in this area now have already been kind of anointing Garoppolo and saying, okay, you know what? Well, Brady obviously doesn't have it anymore. He's kind of over with. He's done. This is Jimmy's town, and people are going to be wearing Jimmy's shoes, and everything is Jimmy Garoppolo. And people despite the last 2 weeks when the Patriots were having those starts, were like just like, okay, what can we get for Tom Brady? And that's what free agency has kind of done even to fans because it's like okay, well, we got to sell high because he's gonna be at the tail end of his career. So at this point, what would we get? What would be satisfactory to get for Tom Brady? And that's insane to think about. To me it is. I mean, I understand his window's closing, but it's insane to say, okay, he had a couple of bad games instead of just riding with the guy who won you a couple of Super Bowls and saying, all right, well, this can't all be pinned on him. Do you
Right,
know what I'm
right.
saying, Miss
No,
L?
you know what? I am right there with you, and I just can't. But it's, what? But what else is really kind of sad to me is to see Tom Brady and to see Peyton Manning, getting up there in age. The realization is hitting you that you're
Yeah,
not going to see these great players on the field for much longer. And love
right.
them or hate them, you have to give them their due. But you're right,
Mm-hmm.
fans nowadays are so quick to want to overthrow, get rid of that guy,
Yeah.
fire that coach, get rid of this one, get rid of that one. And you can't have a revolving door installed in a team and expect that there's going to ever be cohesion or anything. I mean, you're right. Free agency has not just ruined the game. For players, or it hasn't just ruined the situation as far as players go. It's ruined fans as well. And
Yeah.
speaking of like crazy, wacky, really, you know, just can you believe this? Speaking of quarterbacks leaders, let me just tell you, Claire and I are very happy this week because our boy, that's right, Cuddy, he is the passing leader this week. Can you believe that? How about that? And LaShawn McCoy, the rushing leader of the week, no shock there.
Right, right.
T.Y. Hilton is the receptions leader this week. Um, Talking also about some crazy, crazy things. Tell me your thoughts on Terrell Pryor working out for the Bengals. I mean, he didn't make it in Oakland. He didn't make it in Seattle. What's your take on that?
You know, I heard this story briefly about how he was working out for the Bengals and he the Raiders didn't want him. You can understand why, the Seahawks technically didn't need him either. Although it seems like it would have made more sense in Seattle than in Oakland, just because of, not that they're the same player, but it's a similar type of game that he would have played comparable with Russell Wilson. You don't have to do much when you have Marshawn Lynch. You just don't. You don't
Right.
have to be like a fantastic pocket passer, and that's not a knock on Wilson, because I think that for the scheme that they have for him, he plays it to a T.
No, he
He
does.
is flawless at what they have for him. But you don't need a whole lot when you have such a talented running back. Of course, the Seahawks would be completely have to rethink their game plan should something happen to Marshawn Lynch. But Terrell Pryor would have been a better fit in Seattle to me than going to work out for the Bengals, who have A.J. Green. You know, they have these receiving weapons, and that's what their game mostly is. Gio Bernard, I personally love. I'm a big fan of his. He had a breakout season for his rookie year last year. You know, that's why they let the law firm go, is because they figure that the kid can handle this load now. And they do have a stable running game in Cincinnati, but it doesn't make sense to have Terrell Pryor there unless you're trying to develop a different game plan other than, you know, what Andy Dalton has. But the game plan to me that's in Cincinnati is just predominantly passing. They're a passing attack.
Right.
So it's crazy. I also heard that he kind of didn't really want to go on tryouts, that he just settled for this because he realized that that's all he was getting was tryouts. He wanted to be signed by a team and was actually like not taking meetings with people because he was like, if you're not going to sign me, I don't want to come to you. It's like, do you
Hold
realize
I
yeah.
mean, hold up, bruh. What are you talking about? You know, you, okay, if you were, let's see, let's think of the correct name here. If you were, oh, I don't know, let's say Welker in the days with Tom there in New England. Welker, I guess I should say, right?
Yeah,
In the days
right.
of New England. If you were that good and you were that capable, then okay. If you were AJ Green, if you were Megatron, if you were, you know, I hate to even say it, if you were, let's see, I'm trying to think of somebody else. Um, you know, if you were any other level of player than Terrell Pryor, then people would want to just say, oh, Terrell Pryor is available. Well, let's sign him right this minute. But there is a
At this point, I
real
think the chance of getting signed than he does.
you are so right. You are so right. But you know, and talking about having to rework your you know your roster and things like that. I mean, there are so many teams, and I can tell you from personal experience. I mean, we've lost, and it's another situation where I get to say I told you so, and I love it because all the haters who wanted to say something mean and nasty about D'Angelo Hall, how you like our secondary now, huh? Now that
Yeah.
D'Angelo is out for the year, how do you like our secondary now? I thought so. So injuries are just decimating everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
you talked about you guys losing Victor Cruz for the entire rest of the season, which is
Hmm.
horrible. Then you've got um, Danny Trevathan. He's on
Hmm.
injured reserve, though expected to return. He's on the one where he can come back because he's got a knee injury. Victor out, done with a knee injury. Gerard
Yeah.
Mayo and Stephen Ridley, both questionable about how long. Both,
Stephen Ridley actually is out for the season. He has a double whammy because he has an AC and MC. So
uh,
he's done for the season. Mayo possibly could return
that's
towards
awful.
maybe the end, and if the Patriots, which of course they should win that division, make the playoffs, Mayo could be back by then, but Ridley's done. He's got a double whammy.
That's awful. And then you've
Yeah.
got D. Milliner, done, Achilles. You've got
Yep.
Alex Mack, done, broken left leg. Then you've got Megatron, high ankle sprain, gone for 1 to 3 weeks. You got Darren Sproles. He's also, he's a strained or a sprained MCL. He's out
Yeah.
for 1 to 3 weeks. What is going on with these injuries? Is it the playing surfaces? Is it the fact that you have such a small window where you can hit folks that guys are having to contort to make sure that they hit people correctly? What's going on? What's your take with all of these injuries?
You know what? I think with all these injuries, it happens to come just in a curious timing with a lot of these new rules too, because I almost feel as if guys don't know anymore how to tackle properly without getting a penalty. And
Right.
I think because of that, in a strange way, they're putting their opponents in danger too and more
Hmm.
susceptible to injuries because, when you're going down with these high sprains and, these ACL tears, the MCLs going on, I think it comes back to the whole fact that maybe these guys are afraid of how they're going to tackle to see if they're going to get a yellow flag because that preseason was a mess. You wondered
Uh,
how much it was going to carry on. And if you were
right.
playing a drinking game during the preseason, you would have been drunk all the time, and it would have been you wouldn't have remembered the game, which would have been a good thing.
Well, there. It didn't seem to me like there was very much play going on. It just seemed to be one
No,
big yellow haze of
yeah, it
flags.
was a yellow rain.
Yeah, very true. I mean, and the thing about what you said about not knowing how to properly hit somebody for fear that they're going to get a flag is a very valid point because going through their head, and let's call it. I am nothing but an honest fan, and I will say that my boy
Yep,
Brandon Merriweather has made some hits that were I would have pulled him aside as his coach, and I probably would have told him to cut that caca out. And then there are some hits where you just say he didn't. If the runner or the receiver lowers themselves and he's coming in low, trying not to hit them in the head, then of course
right.
they're going to hit. So not knowing though how to properly hit someone and how to properly tackle someone, it sounds really basic, and it sounds like,
It
oh,
does. It sounds idiotic almost to even say because these are professional athletes.
but it's the truth because you don't want to get a flag, you don't want
You're
to hurt
right.
somebody else, you don't want to get a fine, you don't want to get suspended. Again, you don't want to intentionally. I mean, these guys are, whether they like each other or not, they're in a brotherhood. They're not out there to
Right.
maim each other. I mean, I know that they talk about, wanting to wipe up the field with people, but that's not. Oh, I'm
Right.
intentionally going to go out and break Alex Mack's left leg today. You know. So
Right. Right.
you bring up a very interesting point though about that, and I would say that I would have to agree with you because unfortunately I think that the game is, and it has to evolve in such a way that you have to be aware of injuries and you have to be aware of safety because listen, we don't want these guys to suffer not even in their old age. I mean, look at the guys who have brain damage, who are young, who really haven't been playing the game that long. We don't want them to suffer with horrible, debilitating illnesses. But at the same time, you have to wonder what putting piling more and more and more rules on them is
Right.
doing to them.
Well, I think it's restricting them too. And with the way the preseason is constructed as well, it's almost as if, you know, with the way it's constructed, they're not getting the proper conditioning that they need any longer. And you're coupling all of that together, and this is what's happened. Last year, there were a lot of injuries, especially to running backs. This year, there are injuries just piling up. And it's difficult. I mean, you know that this is a tough game, and when you're getting tackled, it's basically getting hit by a car. That's the equivalent of what it's
Yep.
like. And you're getting into at least 10 to 15 car wrecks a game per player at times.
Hmm.
And this is why they make the money that they make. And I know that people say that it's an obnoxious amount, even league minimum is too much. It's not too much when your career is basically anywhere from, depending how injury free you stay, maybe you have a 10 if you're lucky, 15 if you're blessed, you have a 15-year career.
Right.
But then you're also 50 years old and having a harder time than most getting out of bed because your body just can't withstand the abuse that you put through it.
Right.
And I understand that's why they're trying to protect these players, but at the same time, in a way, I think they're kind of hindering them too, because when you're trying to not go for the head, and we all know, like, there have been some dirty players, but those are few and far between that were the technical headhunter type players. Most players didn't intentionally go for the upper shoulder region. And when you're taught to tackle, in Pee Wee football, you're taught to tackle around the waist. But
Hmm.
when the game moves so fast and you're like, okay, well, if I go in too high, I'm going to end up getting a penalty because it's going to be a wrong tackle. But then when you're going low, this is why you're taking people's knees out.
Right.
So you have a choice, the head or the knees.
Right.
And it seems ridiculous to say because obviously your head, you're going to get concussions. And you could end up with headaches, obviously brain damage, which is a very bad thing. You take out your knees, what if eventually, you're going to have a hard time walking, and it's very apples and oranges, and it shouldn't even be a comparison because obviously nobody should want a head injury. But when you're putting restrictions on like this is what's happening. You're causing players to think in the moment and then force them to take people down in very unnatural, wrong ways.
Right. Or, if they see someone coming, if they're going for the tackle and they see someone coming at them and again they're lowering themselves, they've got to make a split second decision. Oh God,
Right.
I don't want to hit them in the head, so I got to turn this way or I got to turn that way. And oh no, he's turning the same way. And then, I mean, it a lot of people, don't think about all the things that have to be running through their head at any given
Exactly.
moment in a game. So, and I would venture to say that, I agree with you that this is the reason why the injuries are on the rise. I mean, you can you can rule something or law something to death, as I like to say
Mhm.
sometimes. And I think that, there has to strike some type of a chord between, what's right and what's safe.
Yeah.
And then allowing them to just play. But talking about though injuries, I have to tell you, this I could not believe this when I saw this. Vontez Burfict, shame on you. You are really, really, really hopefully going to get in some trouble for this. You cannot twist somebody's leg off at the ankle. They don't come unscrewed from the ankle. And stop doing that. Everybody saw you. Everybody. Did you see this? Did you see the tape of him taking and uh, almost like a twist off? He was like a wing nut. He was trying to twist Cam's ankle off and Greg
Yeah.
Olson's ankle off. What is going on with these guys? You know? Oh,
I mean, that's just crazy. I saw that, and actually, like, I have quite a few friends who do talk radio in Charlotte, and they were just so irritated by it, as well they should be, especially since, when you're going for, especially Cam's ankles. I mean, that's just deliberate because you knew he had a prior ankle injury.
right. Come on now.
Coupled with, yeah, exactly. It's like, you're going to take him down, but it just looks a little bit more suspicious when you're doing it to Cam Newton, who has who is, it's common knowledge that he's had an ankle injury, and then you're going for the ankles. I mean, why don't you just turn around and in the next play do a whole WWE move and body spear him in the ribs and go for the ribs next? You
Right.
know, you want to play like that. I mean,
I,
I think that that's just horrible.
I, you have to wonder. You have to wonder what these guys are thinking. Do
Yeah.
they forget that there are television cameras all over the place? Come
I
on.
don't see how they could forget when social media is such at the forefront now, and not only are cameras all over the place, but cameras are in everybody's pockets now with their phones, and it's like there's no place to hide anymore, and there's
Mhm.
nothing to hide anymore. I mean, with Facebook, Twitter, Tinder, whatever the hell you're on and that you use, there's so many things now. It's like, even if by some chance the TV broadcasting people didn't get it, there are people who are sitting there who got it, who are just now putting it on the internet
You
and
better
saying,
believe it.
well, yeah, exactly. Especially since everybody wants that first, like, check this out, look what I got, I'm the first to post this type moment. So that way they get a lot of, retweets and followers on this and everything. I mean, it's just proof positive of what happened with Richard Sherman, too, with the whole Aaron Andrews thing. His Twitter account jumped a ridiculous amount after that. And that's exactly what social media is about, though. And when you're trying to do this to a player and go for the ankles and then act like, oh, like, what's everybody all up in arms about? Like, I didn't mean anything by it. Really?
Yeah, well, if you didn't mean anything by it, then I don't know. Why did it look like you were trying to rip his leg off? I mean,
On two different players, though.
Exactly. So I mean, and you know what? And it's perfect that you said it's perfect that you tied that in with Richard Sherman because I have to say that if it isn't someone who is, and again, and I'm gonna call it as I see it here now, Ndamukong Suh, I think gets a bad rap sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because there are times when his hits are completely legal
Yeah.
and there are times when he has been less than stellar as far as following the rules. However, if it's not something like that, where you've got like Chris Baker, and I'm sorry, I mean, I have to laugh because I'm sure you probably saw the hit that Chris Baker, and it wasn't even a hit, it was kind of like a shoulder that Chris Baker gave to Nick Foles in the game when we
Yeah.
played Philadelphia. There had been a turnover, or so we thought, and people were going toward the play. So I guess Chris Baker was just supposed to allow Nick Foles to stop the advancing Redskin player at the time. Anyway, I digress. So you've got things like that, but then you've got players like Richard Sherman who want to boast and brag about their skill set. And it's great.
Yeah.
Nobody's taken his talent away from him. But you know what I find really, really, really amazing to me is that when someone has a mouth that big and wants to call attention to themselves the way that he wants to call attention to themselves, why it is then when all of a sudden we hear what? Crickets after
Mm-hmm.
games where I mean even when they came to town and he played us, let me tell you something. He got torched a couple of times
Yeah.
by Deshaun, and he got torched once by Pierre, and Pierre pulled his hair. Pierre pulled my hair. So you've got these players who, you know, listen, they're on center stage. I get it, but I'll tell you, if my son played and he did something like what we saw Montez Burfict
Mm.
do, or if he ran his mouth the way Richard Sherman does, let me tell you, I don't care how old he is. I'd have him by his ear, and I'd be pulling him into the other room to have a little corrective interview with him. Um,
Yeah.
it it's crazy though. I mean, the, I used to think that NBA players were the bad boys of the sporting world. I'm sorry,
Oh no.
football players have trumped them now.
Yeah, definitely. It's so weird because it's almost the reverse situation where even though NBA players seem to have been the bad boys, you hear about fewer NBA players getting into the trouble that a lot of these NFL players are getting into. And I don't know if it's because the conduct code for the NBA has gotten a little bit more strict. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it just seems that there's a lot more players that are out of control in the NFL now,
I
where
would agree with
it's
you.
it's almost like the blame. It's almost like the blame game. You know what I mean? Where everybody says, okay, well, this is Goodell's responsibility to punish them. And Goodell says, oh, no, this is the team's responsibility to punish them and keep their players under control. And then it just kind of goes back and forth like, oh, no, this is not my fault. You have to go here. And everybody's just pointing fingers, but nobody wants to take responsibility. And it's very curious to me because Goodell has staked his reputation basically on the fact that he was supposed to be the sheriff. You know,
Hmm.
he's supposed to be basically the vigilante, the punisher, where he prided himself on saying, okay, this is what your behavior is. Okay, well, this is what your punishment is, and I don't care what your team says.
Well, when you've got someone made this point, and I thought it was a really good one, where, in a league where you get suspended for, I don't know, a game for breaking the law, and
Yeah.
yet, you get fined. How much did Colin Kaepernick get fined for wearing the wrong brand of headphones? What was
Oh,
it,
it was,
like $12,000 or $15,000, something
yeah, I
like
was going
that?
to say like
When
$15,000, how he was told he couldn't wear a Miami hat. I
I'm,
mean, you're wasting your time on
it's
things like
babysitting
that.
at this point. And hello,
Right.
the NFL is not, the National Infants League. These are grown men who need to be told, follow the rules or get out. And,
Exactly.
it's not babysitting. The team and the league should not be going back and forth. And Mike Wilbon actually made a great point on PTI tonight. He said about Vontez Burfict that if the NFLPA wants to be taken seriously and wants to be appear, if they want to be as credible as they um, say that they are, then they will yank Vontez Burfict down to their office and say, look here, you can't do that. We are not having that. We are not going to have you doing this. You know,
Yeah.
we're going to impose some sort of a fine or some sort of a punishment on you for this. But yeah, the league is just. I mean, I don't like the
I
direction I
almost
see the
feel
league.
like I almost feel like it needs to be a separate division where Goodell is doing his part by making money for the league, by getting deals for the league and making the owners money.
Right,
I feel like there should be a separate division almost if they feel that punishment needs to be doled out.
right,
And somebody who is a non-biased, no strings attached type needs to take kind of leadership of what needs to happen, because to me it made no sense. And I really don't want to get into it because it's been talked about to death, but with the whole Ray Rice thing, you have
right,
Ray Rice, only suspended for a couple of games, and that would have stood if there wasn't such an uprising,
right,
especially. And Michelle Beadle actually, had tweeted out quite a few controversial things that made people think and say, you know what, it's kind of true. But you have him, and then you have Josh Gordon, who now is selling cars. And I'm not trying to downplay what Gordon did because, he did get a DUI. He put not only his life, but the potential other people's lives in danger too. But then you have actual, proof of what somebody did to their fiance, now wife, and for some reason it wasn't investigated the way it should when TMZ made one phone call to
right.
get this evidence, and the NFL just I almost feel like they wanted it kind of swept under the rug, and when it came out a couple years later, they'd throw their hands up and go, oops, our bad, we didn't know that this existed. And I think that they were kind of playing the wait game. But when you have kind of rogue, freelance, let's say, rogue is a tough word, freelance journalism like TMZ, who isn't in bed with the NFL, who has absolutely no ties to it, producing things like this, it made the situation just escalate even further, especially when their reporter basically told Goodell, look, we made one phone call. So to me, when the whole Patriot Spygate was going on, you're going to fly somebody in from Hawaii to your New York offices to interview them about taped practices, but you can't make one phone call to a hotel in Jersey.
Exactly. Exactly. And see, and part of the problem is too, and I think that this is giant across many different situations of
Yeah.
leadership that we have in our country, and that is that the money, the interest, the cash interest, the money interest
Right.
within talks, and everything else be damned. And I'm right there with you on the Rice situation. I think that the NFL has taken some serious hits this year. I wish that
Mm-hmm.
there would have been this kind of an outcry when Ray Lewis got away with murder, but we won't go back to that. I mean, there are plenty of things.
Unfortunately, I think the situation with that is social media wasn't as prevalent.
No, it wasn't around at all. So I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
so
Exactly. I mean, had
right,
that
but had
been,
it been,
it would have been a different situation
yeah, exactly.
because somebody would have had their camera phone out videoing it.
Or somebody would have gotten a picture that could have been sold to a media outlet, a TMZ,
Right.
an Entertainment Tonight or something like that kind of a thing.
Exactly.
But I think the NFL has taken, no pun intended here, some serious hits this season, and I think that they need to take a step back and they need to reassess. And the fact that you're
Hmm.
just putting chicks in jobs where you're giving them these titles, are they really doing anything, or is that just a
It's part PR. It's
I,
part to save face.
right, exactly. And so what exactly are these women doing? And listen, I'm going to be I'm not going to stick up for Roger Goodell anymore. I thought, what, for a while there I thought he's trying to clean the league up. He's trying to get these guys to buckle down and be the grown men that they are. But I've lost all respect for him, and I don't think I can support him anymore. And the only thing other further that I have to say about him is that he could he be any more disingenuous? I don't think so.
No, he couldn't be. And you know what? It's just basically a puppet show at this point.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely right. What's really odd to me is that I was just in talking about other really crazy things going on around the league. Who knew San Diego Chargers, 5-1,
Yeah.
leaders of the AFC West? Who knew? Philip Rivers. I'm not going to say that he is the best quarterback that was ever in the league. But you know what? Old Phil is nothing if not consistent, and
Right.
and he has done it. He is doing a great job out there in San
He is.
Diego. Um, they have been a powerhouse. Who thought Philly and Dallas would be tied for the lead in our beloved NFC East? Or that Detroit would be tied with Green Bay for the lead in the NFC North. I swear, this whole everything in the league is topsy turvy, is backwards, is
Yeah.
upside down. I mean, it just there's a lot of really weird stuff going on. So tell me, what's been your biggest surprise so far this season? Just with a particular team or standings or anything else, anything that really kind of stands out to you?
I do have to say the Dallas Cowboys are a surprise to me because, the whole saying they are who they thought we thought they were. It's like, well, the Dallas Cowboys are not who we thought they were because when Sean Lee went down for the season and all of it seemed like most of their defense basically walked out the freaking door. Everybody was like, how the hell is this Cowboys team going to get by? Their defense isn't even supposed to be somewhat good, not even a little bit good. And then you're going to put all of this on Tony Romo. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I don't hate Romo. I don't, but we all know that in clutch times, Romo is not clutch. This is when he could have a fantastic game, and everybody just remembers that interception that ended the game because they just got knocked out of field goal range. Or, he finds a way to kind of be Charlie Brown when Lucy takes the football away.
Oh, poor Tony. He does take a
He really
beating.
does. He takes a beating, and now DeMarco Murray is not hurt, and they have a running game. I'm just waiting for everything to come crashing down because eventually I do feel like DeMarco Murray is going to pull a hammy. He's going to get an injury of some point, and then they're going to have to lean a little bit more on their passing game. It really pissed me off a little bit because I have Tony Romo as one of my fantasy football quarterbacks, okay? I'm in 7 leagues. I have Romo in a couple of them, and I have Des Bryant because I love a good wide receiver quarterback combination. I'm a sucker for it. I'll do it all day long. I love it. And then all of a sudden, I find myself screaming at the TV. I'm like, why is DeMarco Murray getting the ball? Is he not hurt yet? Seriously, where is Des Bryant in this game? Why are you taking the passing game away from Tony Romo? When did the Dallas Cowboys become a running team? Why is their defense doing this? This is not supposed to happen.
Right.
Jerry Jones sold his soul again. He had to have.
No, he had to. Because I'm going to tell you what.
He had to because they are not who we thought they were.
No. And all I can tell you is wait for it, because December is right around the corner.
It is. It is. But I think that's the biggest surprise. Phillip Rivers really doesn't surprise me just because I've always been kind of big on Phillip Rivers. And I think that he is a fine quarterback. I think that, I was actually pretty upset when Phillip Rivers got traded to the Chargers in favor of Eli Manning on draft day. I was not a big, no, seriously, like I wanted Phillip Rivers as a Giant. I really did. I would have rather have had him. And I can't complain because I know Eli's given us 2, nice and shiny Super Bowl rings. I get that. But, David Tyree also aided in that. So I'm just saying, there's a helmet that, the Giants fans need to thank. And
Yeah.
a little bit of stickum maybe.
Yeah,
but,
well, you never. Hey, we're not casting aspersions, nor are we making any accusations. We're just saying.
I'm just saying that if I had the choice, I would have rather have had Phillip Rivers. And that is not a knock on Eli, but I didn't like the way things went down. I thought it made Eli Manning look like a spoiled brat. And I would have rather have had Phillip Rivers. He went to the Chargers. I really felt that he's had good teams around him, especially having the luxury of having LaDainian Tomlinson. He had a great running game. And for some reason, whether it really can be pinned on Marty Schottenheimer, they just haven't been able to get things done. I think this year could possibly be the year. It would not surprise me if you see San Diego in the AFC title game. That would not surprise me.
And I wouldn't be shocked at that either. I'm happy. I'm kind of happy for them because they're one of those teams that for a while there they were like, oh, that close.
Yeah, so close.
So many different times that you just wanted to say, good God, when are they going to be the bride? They're always the bridesmaid. When are they going
to always
be
the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Right.
And I just like the way Phillip Rivers plays too, because he's just so passionate and you see the emotion. And I've always really liked that out of my players. I mean, it's, some people say, okay, that the dramatics and the theatrics, I don't have time for. I want time for that. I need to see that because it's showing me that my player cares a little bit. And it's kind of a knock I do have on Eli because he's Mr. Stone-faced all the
No,
time.
that's not true. Now, how
You
many
just,
times? No, wait. Now, how many times have we seen him go? So he is showing you
okay,
emotion.
okay, a little bit, but it's not the same. And I do have to say that one of the games that I enjoyed the most, and it isn't even a Giants game, and it's going to surprise a lot of people because everybody knows how I feel about the New England Patriots that follow me. But the game that so far I have enjoyed the most this year, and it was solely based on Tom Terrific himself, it was the game against Cincinnati. I was at that game. The electricity in the stadium was unbelievable. I have not seen Brady play with that kind of urgency and passion in a really long time. It was fun to watch. It's exactly what that team needed, and I'm glad that I got to see it because it was fun. It was fun to see that energy and that passion out of Tom Brady. It was almost like to me, and I had said this on my show, is that it was the equivalent of Muhammad Ali in the ring asking, "What's my name?" That's what I called it. It's like that was Tom
Nice,
Brady's "What's my name" game
nice.
because he would not let up. The Bengals looked confused from the first play. They looked disoriented. They didn't have an answer for it. And it's like Tom Brady was actually like jumping on the field, jumping on the sidelines, spiking balls. And I had looked at my buddy at one point. I said, I dare anybody to leave him hanging tonight.
Right.
I dare
Nobody's
that.
going to miss the high five with him
Nobody's,
tonight.
yeah, exactly. Nobody's leaving Tom Brady hanging tonight. That is one of the games this year that I have thoroughly enjoyed watching the most, just based on the pure passion that was on the field. And that is what you are watching football for.
Well, you know what? And that was a great game. And I'll have
It
to tell you,
was.
following your boxing lead, I can tell you that the fans here in Washington are like Roberto Duran in the Sugar Ray Leonard fight, screaming, "No mas, no mas,
No, no.
no mas, no mas, por favor, no mas." Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we're
exactly. It's just one of those things, and the thing is, it's like with the Redskins, it's just like you or the Washington football team, you can't be happy about either situation and scenario right now because it was almost very split to me when RG3 had kind of gone down and people were like, finally, we get an excuse to put Kirk Cousins in. We have a reason. This is why we didn't trade him away. Finally, the team is going to gel the way it's supposed to. And he hasn't played terribly, but he hasn't played to what everybody anointed him to be either.
yeah. Yeah, well, how is that plan to take Robert's job away from him working out? Not too well. Not when
Yeah,
you throw
not
multiple
too well.
interceptions in the third and the fourth quarter. Not when I was chatting with a fellow football fan on Twitter after the game, and he was talking about how we needed to do something. We needed to figure out something for Kirk
Yeah.
to be, to be more comfortable. And I said that in addition to whatever it is that you're suggesting, I would suggest flashcards with the correct color uniforms on them. For God's
Yeah.
sake. Although I will say that for a while there, they were looking like kind of sort of decent on Sunday,
Right.
but I'll tell you what, I think probably the game for me that was that has been the most exciting was I saw a little bit of the Carolina Cincinnati game, the
Yeah.
one that ended up in a tie. I thought that was kind of an edge of your seat kind of a game
It,
as
it
well.
really it really was. And like I said, I do have a lot of people who I do talk radio in Charlotte, and it was almost as if that game needed to be that way to play up to that level of intensity, because there were people that are still questioning Cam Newton. And it's, again, crazy to think how fickle fans are, because people are saying, oh, Cam's not, his ankles still aren't right. His ribs still aren't healed. Why is he not, playing up to his capability? Why is he not running? Why is he not doing this? Why is he not being Cam? Why is he not being Superman? Where did Superman go? Maybe it's time for DA to take over. Really? You're going to say that Derek Anderson needs to start over Cam Newton? Are you out of your mind?
Oh, God.
But this is the typical mentality of a very uneducated type fan who thinks that, winning is going to happen if you replace your pieces that got you there. You are never going to replace that piece that is Cam Newton, and especially now that they are trying to build a team around him. And unfortunately, the only thing that Cam Newton is kind of missing at this point is maybe one more receiver, which I thought was very funny, because that's what the biggest knock on the Panthers is where are the receivers for Cam? Who's Cam going to throw to?
Right.
And it's like, but now their running game is in such shambles and disarray, especially now you're drawing on your fourth string guy, because, Jonathan Stewart is out, D'Angelo Williams is gone, and you're dipping back into Mother Hubbard's cupboard, and it's kind of bare at this point. But who Cam is throwing to is a very talented Kelvin Benjamin and a very reliable Greg Olsen. And those are his two weapons at this point right now. And you do have Cottree there, and he does have people to throw to, but they need a little bit more of a running game for Cam, because now they're putting that on his shoulders too.
Right, because they definitely. I mean, when you have a quarterback who can do many things for you, contribute in many different ways, you should never allow, and we've seen it with multiple teams, you should never allow for all of that to fall on their shoulders. You should make sure that they have a cache of weapons that they can go to, no matter whether it's the running scenario, a passing scenario, no matter what it is. You need to be able to give them the tools to be able to do their job well. So, and talk.
And I think what people take for granted with Cam too is that he's so big and strong.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And he's mobile. And it's like that's the difference between him and a lot of these mobile quarterbacks. Is most of these mobile quarterbacks have a smaller stature and aren't going to be able to take the hits like Cam can. But Cam shouldn't be taking those hits either, because he shouldn't have that extra responsibility.
No. Like, I don't know how tall Colin Kaepernick is, but I know Robert is only like 6. I don't mean only, but Robert is 6'2". Not sure how tall Colin is. Who else is really mobile other than these guys? I mean,
Russell Wilson is fairly mobile as well, but he's on the Doug Flutie side of the end.
Yeah, he's and God bless him. Nothing wrong with. I'm only 5'4.5". So I know that good things come in small packages.
Yes, absolutely.
So no disparaging Russell Wilson for his stature.
Right.
But yeah, none of them are as tall and as solid, it seems to me, solid built as Cam is. But again, you have to make sure that you expand the capability and expand the opportunity for them by giving them the tools that they need to do their job. So before we say goodnight, I want to ask you to give me, this is my favorite segment of the show. I want you to give me one play a please for the player that you think this week who did the most boneheaded thing. And then, of course, your play-on player for the player who you feel did the best job this week. So take it away, Pam.
it's a little bit tough. I have to go with the genius that tried twisting Cam's ankle as playa, please. I definitely, I mean, you can't get any more filthy than that. You just can't. And I just, it's just like, there shouldn't even be enough said about that. As far as player of the week, and I know that they lost the game last night, but I do have to say, for play on player, I really like Austin Davis. I really do. I really think that he has a very bright future in St. Louis, and I think that his story is incredibly cool. I am glad that he's getting the chance he's gotten. I know that they unraveled towards the end, and that Colin Kaepernick shines in the spotlight that is Monday Night Football, and he did have a very great game himself, but I like Austin Davis a lot, so he needs to play on player just because I think that when they incorporated Trey Mason last night. Who remembers that Tavon Austin plays for the Rams? Oh my God, Austin Davis does when you incorporate him in the game. And I think that this is exactly the direction St. Louis needs to go in, and I think that they possibly have finally found their guy.
I hope so for them. I hope so.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you for play it, please. I mean, come on, Vontez. Get it
Yeah.
together. Don't embarrass your mama on national TV anymore. Don't embarrass your people, okay? Just don't do it.
Yeah.
And stop trying to twist people's feet off because it's just, come on,
It's wrong.
you know better. It's wrong.
It's wrong.
I am going to have to go though. I have to go away from football for my play on player this week because I have to call out my boy. Let's see. Let me move the right way. He's right there. You can see the picture behind me. My son, my favorite son. He's my one and only child. My favorite son, Chad. It was Chad's birthday last Saturday, and so I have to
Aww.
give him the kudos. Happy birthday. Even though he hates me to say it, I still think you and Colin Kaepernick have the same hair and a similar nose. Said it in front of a whole bunch of people. So he gets my play on playa for the week, and I want to, Pam, just thank you so much for coming and talking with me tonight. I had a
Oh,
blast. I want you to
absolutely.
come back anytime that you want to. But please,
Anytime.
before we take off, I would love for you to remind folks where they can find you. So take it away.
Okay, well, you can find me on Twitter at Sporty Diva. You can also go to www.sportsinfusion.net to read the fine articles from my writers like Thomas Murphy and Andrew Fain, and of course, listen to my show Sports Infusion every Wednesday. We moved from Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m.
All right. Well, folks, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you who have continued to follow Cover 3. I believe that we are coming up on a milestone here pretty soon, and we will address that in a future show. I want to thank each and every one of you for your tweets, for your messages of support, for your cool questions that you ask me, for sending in your Play on Playa and your Playa Please nominations. And I want to take a moment out just to say a very special and heartfelt message to my friend Cindy in Georgia. I am thinking of you, and I hope that you are doing okay. And to the rest of you, it's your girl, Miss M, saying thank you for tuning in. Have a great night. I hope you enjoyed, and join us again next week when we are back with another episode of Cover 3. Take care, y'all.
Good night, everybody.